Hey everybody, welcome back. I wanted to make this quick video and go over how to take off with your plane. And this comes from one of the common things that a lot of people run into when they're starting out in Flight Simulator is that you tend to start on the runway, right? You start with your engines on, your lights on, you have your clearance, you are pretty much good to go. The challenge with that is going from that situation to being parked like you see here and actually taking off can be a difficult process because it takes more steps. So I kind of wanted to go over this and kind of give an idea of how you are supposed to get started. Now, one important caveat here is I'm not a professional pilot. I'm a professional at crashing, though. So if you believe something works differently, by all means, leave a comment as we're all learning as we go along. So as we get started, there are 2 points that I want to make. The first is I'm going to leave my EFB showing. And the reason I do that is specifically for this piece, the checklist. You can follow the checklist along and actually see what we're doing, why we're doing it, and it allows you to also look and highlight specific buttons. So that's one of them. You're going to see the EFB a couple times. The second part is here. You're seeing that we're at a small airport. There's just literally one strip here, tiny strip. A couple of airplanes, it's tiny. So I pick a tiny airport on purpose. If you start at a massive airport, there's going to be a ton of traffic. It's going to be hard for you to follow every step. The radio is going to be constantly blaring at you as people, call things out or push out requests. And as you're starting out, you'll find that if you start with a smaller plane at a smaller airport, it's a lot easier for you to pay attention to following the steps and making sure that you understand why the plane is doing what it's doing. So there's also no air traffic control here, and I'll touch on that more once we actually get to using the radio. So from here on out, let's just dive in. What you see in front of you is the Aero Elvira Optica. I believe this is baked into every version of Flight Sim 24. It's weird looking, it's really slow. But I will tell you, it is a great training plane because you have large windows. It's easy for you to look around and see what you're doing. With the engine behind you, your vision all around is so much better. Now, it's really easy to fly. It has a very rudimentary control system, and the panel layout is not only easy to read, but easy to follow. So, having said that, when you start on the ground, you'll see a couple things that you normally wouldn't see if you start out on the runway. And the first one is chalk blocks. Your plane is not going anywhere unless you remove them. Now it's important to remember your plane should have its parking brake set. The sim will set the parking brake for you by default when you load in. The second thing is, normally on most planes you'll have an engine cover, a big red canvas cover. I'm fairly sure they also say remove before flight. You can't miss them. This plane doesn't have one on account of where the engine position is. However, keep that in mind. That's another thing you have to remove on most planes. And then the last one is right here, this tag on the pitot cover. It's in different locations on different planes, but I can assure you it's always there. You don't remove it, your stuff's not going to work. So keep that in mind. Once you've made sure that you removed everything, you can go ahead and get in, and we're going to take a look around here. Now, like I said, simple controls, right? You only have a couple buttons here. You have your controls here. You have your parking brake, your fuel controls. In the center console here are your gauges that basically tell you your engine and fuel health. Well, I should say engine, fuel, and electric health. And up here are all of your avionics that you need. On the right hand side you have your nav panel, radio panel, your transponder, and your autopilot. So that is fairly easy to read. And then when you get up top here, you can see you have the controls for the engine, including the starter, fuel pump, heater, battery, generator, all of that good stuff. And on the right side of this panel, you see a lighting header, and under it are nav, strobe, landing taxi, and your panel lighting. All right, so let's start with our pre-flight. Now we know the doors are closed because we're inside. It should close all of the doors for you. Some planes will have multiple doors that you can control from the EFB. Keep that in mind. We know the parking brake is set. We just hovered over it. And our next step is going to be saying the ignition is off, which off. And now we can turn on the external power. External power is going to be the white button here. It says external power on, hover over, but even if you have that turned off, you can see EXTSUPP. You can guess what that does. And you can see it turns power on to the plane. And so the GPS will start up. All of your systems now have power. You can see here at the bottom, we have amps. We are good. That's the next step, making sure that this one has an appropriate value. Now the next one is panel lights. It's bright daytime here. We don't need the panel lights, but I'll show you anyways, because sooner or later you're going to have to. You can see that these are bright. The brightness buttons for these are on the left hand side of the panel. You see two knobs, avionics and panel brightness. Those control the brightness. We're going to turn it back off because again it is daytime, we don't need it. And before we continue, you can see the GPS here. We're going to hit enter and enter. This allows the GPS unit to start getting a signal so that it's ready to go when we are. Back to the checklist. Navigation lights on. Again, the lights are on this panel right here. Navigation is nav. Next one is panel brightness and avionics brightness. I just showed you where the buttons are for them. Ballast system on this one. It's automatic, but you see there's a red light here. You just press the little indicator, it clears it, you're good to go. With this one, you really shouldn't have to worry about the ballast too much. Next, we basically go to the fuel system. We have external power. The next is setting up the fuel system in such a way that we can get, fuel to the engine. The first is the fuel dump valve has to be closed. That's the big red one here. It does what you think it does, so make sure it stays closed. Fuel shutoff valve has to be open. We can see it's closed right now, meaning that if I followed the entire procedure to start up the plane at this point, fuel would not make it to the engine, the starter would just go chugga chugga chugga, the plane would not start. So we're going to go ahead and open it. Fuel selector has to be on both, and this is where I'm going to show you what this little eye does, the look at button, just so if you ever get lost and you're not sure where something is located, click it and it should drag you to it. Now the fuel tank selector, this thing has two tanks, one in each wing. There's not really a reason for you to be in any other position other than both. You want to use all of the fuel. Both tanks, as you can see here, have an equal half amount of fuel, and that coincidentally is the last step of the checklist here, is looking at these fuel quantities. So we're going to reset ourselves to our default position here and go on to, this is already 3 out of 5. Like, we're going fast here. The next one is engine. The first piece is mixture. And you know what? Before we get to that, I'm going to quickly go over the throttle controls of this specific plane. Normally, on most planes, you will have 3 control levers. One for your throttle, one for your RPMs. I'm moving mine, but you see nothing here because this one doesn't have one. And the last one for mixture, which is the little red one. You're missing the blue one for RPM. RPMs on this plane are managed through your throttle. If you do have a plane where you manage the RPMs through separate controls, like on most common Cessnas that you're going to be flying as you start out, Keep in mind that there will be steps in the pre-flight to also deal with that. The first step is mixture to rich. Mixture again is the red one. I'm just going to push the control forward and mark it complete. Next one is the battery switch. Now remember, we are on external power. So we're going to turn the battery switch on. Auxiliary fuel pump for 3 to 5 seconds, which should be that one. Battery switch back to off. That should have been about 3 to 5 seconds. Throttle open about 1/4 inch. I'm going to have it jerk the camera over there and just gently pull it forward a little bit. You can see it also tells you the mixture is either lean or rich. Forward throttle, same with idle, or all the way forward means give it the beans. Next one is, I don't know why they have it this way in the checklist, but it randomly will interject with like, hey, go turn these lights on. So we're going to turn the strobe lights on at this point. Normally speaking, I will just flip on all lights as soon as I have the chance to feed power to them, just to make my own life easier, but for the sake of this one, let's just go ahead and follow the steps. The propeller area we know is clear, but if you want to be 100% sure, you can see that, well, it's not entirely clear, is it? I can hardly tell that person to move. They're just going to enjoy the wind. And here you can see we have external power, in case you wanted like a visualization of it. So the next step is ignition must be on start position. And this step is a little bit, this is a step that is not super clear for most people because it says ignition. So let's go to the ignition key here. And we see that's called a magneto. What a magneto basically is just like in cars, you need a spark to ignite fuel to start the engine. That's what this is. Consider this basically your ignition. You're going to ignite the fuel going to the engine, allowing it to go vroom vroom. We're going to set it to both, and I can either start it by pushing it all the way to start, or I can use the starter button. Both do the same thing. No matter which one you want to use, make sure that you press and hold. Now I'm going to immediately push my throttle back to idle, and you'll see that it drops. Normally it tells you to keep it on a little bit longer, and then in one of the next steps it goes back to idle. So that's 3 out of 5 done. After engine start, fuel pressure, right down there. Oil pressure, right next to it. And we can see that these are good. Now, we go back up to the main panel. Have to do a lot of zooming here. We're going to make sure that the battery's switched on. We're going to turn the generator on, which is right next to it. These are conveniently in the same spot. And since everything is running and the plane can run off its own power, we're going to remove the external power. And what you'll see is that external power that you saw plugged in down there is gone. When you switch from external power to your own power, you can see that your amps switch from all the way up to a more appropriate amperage for being on your own battery and generator. So we verified that. We can now switch the transponder, which is the second to last from the bottom here, from off into standby mode. The next step is kind of funny. It is for requesting clearance to taxi. We're going to tick it off for now, and I will tell you why in a little bit. The static heater is going to be on the panel. I'm just going to show you where it is, this one. But we're going to leave it off, and that is because we are in Australia. It's daytime. It's plenty hot here. Australia's on the southern hemisphere. I'm fairly sure that it's summer there right about now. Spring into summer, maybe. Either way, it's warm. This plane doesn't go to really high altitudes. I mean, once we get to the runway, that's pretty much the end of the video because this is just for takeoff. But there's no reason to have this on. There are no low temperature flying conditions here. If you fly somewhere where it does get cold or wintry, or you go to really high altitudes, make sure that you do turn your heaters on. If it freezes over, your instrumentation basically fails. Engine warm-up should be complete by now because I left the throttle open. Same for oil temperature. Again, all of these gauges down here will tell you that you're in the right temperatures. Like oil is in the green, engine is in the green. We're good. Throttle, like you see how it says to idle. You can hear the engine stops whining at us. And that should be 4 out of 5 completed. That's pretty good, right? We got there pretty quick. The next one is going to be taxi, and I'm going to do the first one. We're going to go ahead and turn the taxi lights on. The mixture I'm going to keep a little bit lower, as you can see here. Parking brake has to be released. Again, that is this one. If you're connected through a keyboard, it's control space. If not, you can use your phalanges and just push it down. The brake is off now. We're not moving though, and that's because I'm pressing space, which applies the brake. This is just the actual brake. This is our brake test that it asks us to do. And I'm going to go ahead and reapply the parking brake so that there's no chance that we accidentally get going. This was pre-flight, which means before takeoff is the step of us actually going to the runway. As you can see here, small airport, there's the runway, here's us, and there is the tug. You can turn yourself around if you want. Just give it some gas, and you can flip yourself around. If you feel comfortable, feel free to go through the grass. But if you're trying to do this properly, which we are, we're going to have to ask that tug to push us back so that we can get onto the runway. And this is where we get into the radio. I've mentioned it a few times now. The first thing we're going to do when we open the radio is, and I'll show you why, if I want to request ground services before tuning to the traffic channel, I get nothing. See? Nothing. So we're going to tune to traffic. And while we do that, all of the options, taxi, taxi to parking, clear of runway, ground services, picking a runway for takeoff, become available to us. Now when I go to ground services, I can request a tug. Before we do that, this is the traffic channel. This is an airport with no air traffic control. So the traffic channel is called the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, CTAF. You can find that frequency in your EFB for every airport. If you click on it and select more details, it will tell you what frequencies are tied to an airport. So unlike bigger airports that have air traffic controllers, this one does not. You can look around and you can see for yourself there is no tower here, there is nothing here. So communication doesn't go through a tower, rather it goes through the traffic channel. You don't ask for permission like at a big airport. You don't say, hey, air traffic control, can I please taxi? You know, you normally would ask that. They guide you basically through the process. That's not the case here. On a traffic channel, it's the opposite. We don't ask, we say. So, instead of saying, hey, can I please taxi? You're saying, hey man, everyone that's listening on this channel, I'm about to start taxiing. And I'll show you what the announcement looks like.
Yankee Mike India Golf traffic. Dips 1-1IT_N Victor Romeo 00 Mike is taxiing to runway 24. Yankee Mike India Golf traffic.
And as you can see, if you want to kind of dissect the message itself, it tells the entire channel that me, dipshit, is taxiing to runway 24, and closing it with calling out the entire channel. That's all it does. I'll show you again if you want to see. For takeoff, we'll do another one. But this is basically the difference. And this makes it a lot easier for you to get comfortable with taking off from an airport, because the steps involved to get there are a lot fewer, so you can focus on the technical portion of taking off, making sure you can start your engine before you get into the radio portion of it. So the next step is requesting pushback. You're going to have to do this, and you're going to have to live with this, and it's not going to be comfortable. So we're going to go ahead and request it. Now keep in mind, while it gets started, my parking brake is still attached. So my parking brake is still on, meaning that if it attaches, it immediately starts pushing. My parking brake is on, it will do nothing. It will just sit there until I release the parking brake. The second part of that is, you can see controls popped up in the radio panel now. I can, by default it pushes back straight, but I can ask it to steer left and right. I want you to remember that the view that we're in now is the easiest view to do that, because I'm going to request to steer left, so that when it connects it automatically starts pushing me to the left. And I want you to pay attention what direction it actually pushes me into. We are going to the left side of the plane. I just put the brakes back on, the tug is stopped, but keep that in mind when you're doing pushbacks. If you accidentally steer yourself in the wrong direction, you might have to request another one, because you can end up in positions where it becomes really difficult for you to maneuver out of it, which in this case should not be the end of the world, because it's such a small plane and it can turn on a dime. But definitely keep in mind that while you're doing pushback, it pushes you into the direction of the plane, meaning if you're sitting in the pilot seat and you're asking for left, you're asking for your left, not their left. And it's going to push your nose essentially in the other direction. So you might end up in basically facing the wrong direction if you're not paying attention. Now, at this point, we already announced our taxi. The next one is going to be announcing our takeoff. And you'll see once again it does the same thing. It tells the entire channel what my intention is, which is taking off. I'll go ahead and park us on the runway, and then we can basically very quickly complete the last few steps before takeoff. There we go. Now we're back in the cockpit, but we're not entirely ready. Hell, we haven't even turned our landing lights on. So we're gonna do this last step. After that, it's takeoff time, which is something we don't really have to cover here, because this is just exclusively about getting to the runway and getting ready for takeoff. The first one is parking brake set. You might have heard my keyboard go click. Parking brake is on. Landing lights. Again, landing lights are in this strip here. We can turn all of these lights on. Now all of our lights are on. Keep in mind that you also have to turn these off, landing lights and taxi lights, once you start going. Radios are configured by default. They are configured appropriately already. Transponder can go now to here to Alt, which is the one from the bottom that we set to standby. You just go ahead and push the knob all the way through. Heading and altitude indicators, these should be set by default, but if you're unsure, you'll find these on your panel. Okay, keep that in mind. If you do ever need to calibrate them, they will be in the appropriate panel here, but you can see ours are correct, and they should be correct by default. The same for the altimeter. Flight controls moving free and clear. Sure looks like they are free and clear, so we trust it. The next step is kind of a funny one. It asks you to engage the autopilot and then move your flight controls to disengage it. The funny thing is, it will not disengage. I just turned it on, and I'm using the flight controls just to try to trip it. It won't. So we're going to manually switch it back off. Keep in mind that when you're in flight, you're pushing your flight controls will flip the autopilot back off. The last thing before takeoff is setting our flaps. We start in the default position of 0. We can go all the way down to 50 degrees. For takeoff, it is going to be 10 degrees. So I'm just going to set it to 10 degrees, even though that's a step a little further down. We might as well set it now. Elevator trim, aileron trim are going to be these dials right here. You use your trimming surfaces to adjust basically yourself in flight. But as it stands for takeoff, they have to be in a neutral position. Your mixture has to be set to rich. You can see mine is only set halfway. I'm going to push my mixture forward so it's rich. The last one, you can, well, you shouldn't skip it, but it is a pretty easy one. Engine should drop about 150 RPM when you switch from both to either left and right. Again, the magneto is up here. Tick it. You can hear that the engine just dropped in RPMs. You might not hear it because I'm recording at 70% game volume, but I can assure you it drops, and when you switch back to both, it goes up again by a couple RPMs. Throttle is in idle position. I know this because I set it there, but make sure you're in idle. And you can release the parking brake, and this is basically the moment you can start taking off. And that's all it takes. I think, how long did we take? About 25 minutes. Now, if you go through this at a faster speed, once you get comfortable with it, takeoff process will not be that long for small planes. But hopefully this gives you kind of a good idea of what you're going through if you really want to start up properly from scratch and get your plane going appropriately. So hopefully that was informative. If you have anything to add, by all means, leave a comment. I'm always happy to learn new things. And yeah, I hope to see you all in the next video.